My name's Greg O'Connor, Educational Technology Manager here at TechStop Asia Pacific region. And look, it's my great pleasure to introduce to welcome our two presenters for this webinar today, Peter and Fiona. And Peter, I might get you to introduce yourself first to everybody.
Thanks, Greg. My name's Peter. I'm an education officer working for Brisbane Catholic Education, and I've been working for them for about 10 years. And previous to that, I was a special education teacher and a teacher of the deaf for state schools.
Thanks, Peter. And we've known each other for quite a while now in all our work around assistive technology and supporting all students, particularly around literacy. And it's great to have you share some of your stories today in this webinar. And let me introduce you to Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, everyone. So I kind of have a dual role today. So I now work for TextHelp, but in a previous life, I was assistive technology advisor for the public schools in New South Wales, and I'll be talking about some of my experiences then.
Fantastic, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's been fantastic that you've joined our team. So yes, look, and today with Peter and Fiona, we're going to be covering a whole bunch of stuff. What I'll do, we'll start off, I will just give you a quick overview of Read and Write for Windows for anyone who's new to the program or really wants to know more about what this thing is called Read and Write for Windows. I'll do a quick 10-minute kind of demo for you, just run through some of the key features. Once I've done that, I'm going to then hand over to Peter first and then Fiona, and they're going to tell us all about success stories that have happened in this case, Australian schools with Read and Write for Windows, and really in particular how something like Read and Write for Windows really supports personalising learning environments for all our students. When we've heard from those guys, I'll jump back on and tell you a bit about what's new in Read and Write for Windows. If you maybe you've been using it for a while, but you might be interested in what's new in the program, and then Peter, Fiona, and I will then have a quick kind of we'll throw some ideas at you about what we think would be some keys to having a great start to the school year using Read and Write for Windows. And then to finish off, I'll jump back on and just tell you how you can access resources from this webinar, how you'll get access to a recording of the webinar, a whole bunch of other great resources as well, and how you can contact us afterwards here at the Asia Pac office of TextHelp, based in, and that Asia Pac office is based in Brisbane. But before we start, just a quick housekeeping for you. So those folks who are watching this webinar live, so some people will be watching the video of it, but there's a whole bunch of you there watching it live. You on your screen will have a control panel. You can minimize that control panel by pressing the little orange button with the arrow. You can make it smaller or bigger. You're also muted, you'll notice. We've muted all the participants. That's okay. So but if you do want to ask a question, you can use the questions panel that's on your control panel. By all means, during the webinar, if you've got a question of me, a question for Fiona, or a question for Peter, by all means, put your question in there. And what we'll do is we'll probably get to those. We will get to those questions at the end of the webinar, and we'll follow up and see if we can answer any of us can answer those questions for you. And don't forget, you can control how you listen to this webinar via the audio on your computer, so you can turn up or down as is your want. So let's kick off. And now, Read and Write for Windows it's a program that we here at TextHelp provide, and people often call it Read and Write for Windows, but they call it Read and Write Gold is the old name that used to be called, and some people even call it TextHelp. But TextHelp is actually the name of the company, and we at TextHelp, which is a global company, we started in the UK, now have an office in the US as well, in Boston, and now an office for the Asia Pacific region in Brisbane. We provide a whole range of literacy support tools. Well, that was what we did initially all those years ago. We've now expanded to have literacy and numeracy, and we've included into our suite of tools now a newer program called Equatia, which is a program specifically around mathematics and STEM. But today we're looking at Read and Write, and in particular, we're looking at Read and Write for Windows. And what really excites us here at TextHelp is all this about all the tools that we provide is that what schools do once they get these tools. And one of the big things that are happening is schools and students themselves and other institutions like TAFE colleges and universities realize that a program like Read and Write really supports that idea of personalising learning for our students, and in fact giving our learners the ability to drive their own learning using technology to actually have the power to act. And so what we want to do is kind of explore that issue today with Read and Write for Windows. And one way that actually Read and Write for Windows, and Read and Write in particular, supports that idea of personalisation is the fact that it's available to our students and to the teachers across every device that they have access to. So your institution might be a Windows institution, but when a student goes home and they need access to that to Read and Write, I'll say on a different operating system, they actually have access to that. So a subscription to Read and Write gets you access to all devices, and it actually jump here. It's also the institution, but also home. Every student and every staff member has it available on their own personal devices as well. Now, I'll click through a couple of slides there just to say that Read and Write is in fact simply a toolbar and that sits on your screen. That's a comprehensive set of literacy support tools, and those tools support the student around reading, research, organisation and writing. And what I want to do is just jump in and have a quick look about what that does. So I'm just going to minimize that down, and I've got I'm using my laptop here, and I've got Read and Write installed, and you can see on the top of my screen I've got this little blue icon with a white puzzle piece with RW. That's my Read and Write program. I know it's installed, and I click on that, and now it brings up the toolbar for me, and I click it back on again and it disappears. So I've got it set up on top of my screen. I like to have it just hiding there when I'm not using it and bring it down when I do need it. And in schools, for instance, you can set this up so that students have access to that immediately when they log in, or the student can choose themselves. And that's really important when the student chooses themselves, and they actually, once they've logged in and they've got access to their toolbar, they can do a whole bunch of stuff. They can drive this toolbar themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a document. So I've got a Word doc. Open up a Word doc, go to the top of the document here, and just to show some of the reading features in Read and Write for Windows. So I put my cursor at the beginning of the sentence. I want to be able to have this sentence read back to me for a number of reasons. Maybe I'm struggling with reading that. Maybe my words per minute rate is not fast enough for comprehension. Maybe it's just, I'm just getting too much stuff, and it's just actually better for my cognitive load if initially someone reads this to me, so I can get my computer to do that using Read and Write and press the play button.
Elephants are big, really big. They are the largest land animals in the world. They are also clever.
And I'll just pause that now. It's a bit faint because probably the audio, because you're hearing it coming through my microphone, but that's okay. But you can see that I've paused it. You can see that it's reading back to me. It's highlighting each sentence as I go, and then it's highlighting each word that's being read, and I've paused on that particular word. And so it will read all that back to me. I've got it set up so it's reading continuously at the moment. I can go into my settings, which is on the top right-hand corner, and turn off continuous reading. And now when I go back to reading the document,
elephants are big, really big.
I've got it set so it's only reading one sentence at a time. So I can got all that ability to adjust that, and I've got the ability to go in and adjust the voice in there. I can have different voices that I want to use. So if I just jump in back there into my settings again, this time go into more settings. And now I go into speech, and here I can choose, I can have different voices installed. I've got an Australian voice, but I can choose any other voice that I want to have installed there. The speed of the voice, the word pause, and the voice pitch. Whoops, I can even just go down here. I can even change things like pronunciation. It will even auto read the screen for me. So it will read things like the names of the buttons on my screen, the menus, the text, the names of the folders. So it actually is effectively a screen reader for some students who need just more than just the document read back. They actually need everything on their screen read back to them. So that's cool. So what I can do is have that read back. So it will also read. So obviously I've got in Read and Write for Windows, it will read anything on my screen. So I'm reading a Word doc there. I could be reading that in that document. I could be reading it in my OneDrive. I could be using that in Word Online, for instance. Office 365, it's actually wherever I have that documentation. But I give my students some text often in PDF. So if I were to read a PDF, Read and Write comes now with its own PDF reader. The newer version. Sorry, not you older users. People who have used an older version of Read and Write. You might have remembered in the days you had to actually have a third-party PDF reader like Adobe Acrobat Reader and stuff, and you had all the issues around compatibility. Well, now that's no longer, because we've got our PDF reader built in, and when I find my document, it calls it up, and now it actually has that PDF, opens it up, and it comes built in with this little click to speak button if I want to, and I can just click anywhere in my document.
Elephants. If the ivory trade is allowed to grow and elephants have,
and it will read it back to me. And while I'm reading that PDF, some of the features I'm going to show you on top of my screen are all available too. So this PDF becomes accessible for me. So that's using the PDF reader. And of course, we want to be able to use our toolbar on a website. So Read and Write works with all websites. Websites like Internet Explorer, or Edge, it will automatically work with those. Other web browsers, like web browsers like Chrome and Firefox, it works with those as well. All you got to do is just install a little extension to actually get it to be able to do that. But it works across whatever browser you're using. And here I've got a website open, and again, I've got my toolbar at the top. I want to be able to read that. I can do things like I could highlight some words and have it read back.
they will live in almost any.
Or I could, if I wanted to, go up to my tools again, this time choose Read the Web, and with that installed, with that clicked on, wherever I hover my cursor,
Populations are scattered throughout the savannas of sub-Saharan Africa.
it will read whatever text I've hovered my cursor onto, which is really cool, because it means that on a website, if I need to read something and it's a hyperlink, when I try to click it to read it, it's going to hyperlink me to where it has to go. But now I can just hover, and it will read that word back to, or wherever I put my cursor. So that's cool. I'm going to turn that off because I don't need that anymore. So so I can have Read and Write read wherever I am. If I go back to my document here, as well as that, if I'm on a Word doc or a PDF or a website, there's a couple of other tools that are built into Read and Write to support my reading. There's a screen masking tool. When I click on that, I've got it set up so it masks my screen a kind of a purple color, and wherever I've got my my cursor hovering, it gives me a reading window, so it lets me focus on what I'm reading. I can even make adjustments, and maybe I don't want that reading window as I'm screen masking, so I can actually turn that off, and now I can just color my screen whatever color I want, and I can choose a whole bunch of different colors, not only standard colors, but I can put in specific colors that I want to use. So I'm going to turn that screen masking off. So I've got screen masking. A couple of other features I've got built into here. I've got a translator tool, so it will translate it won't translate passages or sentences, but it will actually translate individual words to help me as I'm reading if I need that translated into my first language. And it's also an audio maker. So if I was to highlight all that text in this document, or it could be a web page, I can press the audio maker and it will take that text, put it into the audio maker window, and I can give it a name. I can decide where I want to put this, and it will create an MP3 for me. And so as a student, I could actually go in and create MP3s of text I want to read, and actually have that read to me, maybe away from my computer, offline. I might be my preferred way to actually get access to the information. And like all this stuff, and we're going to hear some stories from Fiona and Peter. When it's actually, these are the tools, but actually, as a teacher, when I'm supporting my students, my learners, to actually access the curriculum and demonstrate understanding, I start to think of a whole bunch of ways that I can use some of these features. So I'm going to get out of that. So quickly, so I'm on a document. So as well as doing that, it's got things like, so here this document has an image. In this image there's text, and I can't read that text because the text is not text, it's part of an image. We're on the screenshot, on our toolbar, we have a screenshot reader. And that's a little OCR tool that lets me put a rectangle around that, and any text I have in that image, it will scan it and it will read it back to me.
Huge ears cover shoulders.
So that's fantastic. So it means that even locked text on websites, text that's locked in images, in diagrams, all that information can be read back. So that's just some of the reading features that are built into Read and Write. When I'm actually time and I'm reading and now I want to get some understanding and comprehension, if I go back up to here and I might find that first word and I need more support, I've had it read to me, but I need to find out what that word actually means. I need to investigate the vocabulary of this text. I can choose my dictionary tool. I've got my cursor on the word elephant, so it automatically brings up, and I can choose to either have a basic dictionary or a more advanced dictionary. It will tell me the part of speech it is. If I click on the definition, it will also read that back to me.
1. A large animal with.
And as well as that, if I need additional support, maybe for younger students or English language learners, or someone who actually just wants to have a visual representation of that definition, it comes built in with a picture dictionary, which, by the way, I can call up individually, not just have a picture dictionary by itself, and there it is. And wherever I put my cursor and change it over, what I can do now is put my cursor on the word land, go back to there, and now it will come up and it will give me that definition as an image. And the great thing about this is that it also is a chance for me to talk about things like, confusable words, homophones. The word land, it's the land we live on. It's also the land of plane, as an example. And then my students can do stuff like they can decide they want to actually grab that word elephants. And I just need to, there we go, grab that and just grab the word land, and maybe there's a couple of other words they want to explore further to find out more about, and then they can choose the vocabulary list feature on the toolbar, and it will take those words they've been exploring and put them into a new Word doc. In that Word doc, put a table with 4 columns. In the first column, put the word that they highlighted. In the second column, the definition from the dictionary. Third column, an image, and a fourth column that they can edit and do stuff with. So that's cool. They could do that from web pages as well, wherever they access text. That's using the vocabulary list feature. So I'm not going to save that. Now I'm just going to go back. So let's look quickly at some of the research and organizational feature. So I've got students, and let's just minimize that Word doc and bring up the website again. So I've just been obviously doing some research into elephants. So I'm on this couple of websites, and I realized that I want to collect this information just as I'm researching this before I start to write. So what I can do is I can find that text there, and this time rather than highlight an individual word, I can grab whole chunks of text from web pages that I would normally just probably copy and paste into my document and forget where I got it all from. But I'll just grab some chunks from a couple of web pages, but I could have model web pages. I could even be grabbing stuff from documents on my hard drive. And once I've highlighted different documents, I can go up to the feature called Collect Highlights. What it will do now, it will actually take whatever I've highlighted off those multiple places that I've been in, put them into a new document, and it will also then put them in and give me a bibliography of where I got all that information from. And I've set this up so it's kind of in an APA citation format, but because I'd already highlighted those 3 words on the previous document too, it's also collected the words from the Word file, telling me where I got that from, and then it's also showing me the 2 web pages I got it from. So that's really cool, and a feature that is utilized by and should be utilized by every student in the school. I won't say that at the moment. Okay, so and now just to finish off, this is a really quick tour. So of the toolbar, just to show just a writing feature. So I want to right now. And so one of the features I've read, I've investigated vocab, I've done some research, now I want to start to write. And on our toolbar, we actually have the prediction feature. And when I start to type, it starts to predict for me. I did this yesterday. Let's have a look. There we go. So and because I've been writing about elephants, obviously, because it's intelligent, this word prediction, the more I type, the more it remembers, and it's actually already remembered that I've used this word elephant, so it's come up. Whoops, I was just playing around there, elephant. And then it starts to predict grammatically as well. So it's actually said maybe the next word is something like was. And so it's actually helping with my spelling, with my grammar. What it's doing, it's actually looking at the words before, then looking at the word that I've typed in, and then predicting what is the most commonly occurring word that would happen after those words I've already typed. If I want to actually add my own vocab in, I can go up to here and actually look at the word banks. And so the prediction comes with a whole bunch of word banks that are built in on different categories. And I can just look at the ones I'm currently using, and you can see I'm using these word banks. But if I actually, and there's one here called Elephants 3, that's my own word bank that I created myself. So I'm a student, I need to be writing around elephants. I need to generate a word bank or a vocab list from that. To do that, I press create. Here, I give it a title. And down where it says add your own text, I can just go to a document I have, maybe a journal article, maybe a textbook page, maybe a web page. Wherever I can get access to that text, I can copy all that text, dump it into here. And when I go create, Read and Write will actually create a word bank that I will have access to. So students can actually get access to vocab on any topic that they're writing about. Now, that was a super duper quick tour, and I'm just going to get out of all this stuff, of some of the features of the Read and Write toolbar. And I'm just going to go back to here and say that we're going to now hand over, just let me get this sorted out. I'm going to hand over to Peter to tell us a bit more about how she's used and how she's seen Read and Write for Windows used across the Brisbane Catholic Ed Diocese. And I'm going to make Peter a presenter. And here we go. Okay, all yours, Peter. When you're ready, you can start to share your screen. Beautiful. There you go.
You can see that now?
I can, and I wondered who your friend is.
A robot that takes his own selfies.
So he's taking a selfie of you and him.
Yes. Actually, it tells you which to go and move your head here and get closer, and then took a selfie at a conference that I was at. But I thought he's quite cute.
Yep.
Thanks, Greg. I'll just share some of the stories of some of our schools that are using Read and Write. As I said before, I'm an education officer. My current role is looking at assistive technology, and really that focus is building the capacity of our schools to cater for diverse learners. I probably have a bit of a bias or a slant between using the technology to support all learners, not just to pick on targeted students or students that we perceive as having needs. Okay, so I work in the Brisbane North area of the Archdiocese, which includes all of our schools north of the river, and most people probably wouldn't realise that that Archdiocese actually stretches up to Hervey Bay, Childers, out to Gayndah, Mergen, Kingaroy, so sometimes I'm quite on the road, and some of those schools are really making great use of the Read and Write software. If we start with one of our schools that are visited, so I'll just share a story about Tony. So Tony's a teacher in year 2, and when I first presented to the school, she put her hand up and said, yes, I'm interested in using this with my kids, but let me tell you, I'm not confident with technology. So we started off with a little bit of a lesson, showed the students how to use the picture dictionary, how to use the word prediction, and how to use the reading feature to read back their own writing. And Tony took that into using it regularly or almost weekly for journal writing. She actually used it in a publishing mode. So she encouraged students to have a go at writing first in their books, and then when they were able to finish that, they could then go to the computer and use their Read and Write to put it in, to be able to fix up their spelling and to be able to add photos, the pictures from the picture dictionary into their text as they liked. And she found that that really motivated some of her reluctant writers, and because they were quite confident that they could eventually fix it up and their work would look perfect. And she's still using it now and is a bit of a convert, so I love going up and visiting her classroom. The support teacher at the same school, Chrissy, just asked her to share a few of her stories, and she felt that probably the biggest benefit that she's seen for the technology in the school is for the students who have language difficulties. And specifically, the vocabulary tool, the picture dictionary. She loves that when you look up a definition of a word, it has an example of how the word is used in context. And the fact that the definition can be read out aloud. So students who need support with that often struggle to be able to read the definitions in a normal dictionary. So she loved that feature. In my opinion, probably the vocab tool has been my absolute favourite. As a teacher of the deaf for many years, I used to always advocate with teachers to create glossaries of terms. However, I knew that that took quite a long time to create. If you had to Google a definition and copy and paste it, you had to Google an image to stick with it. And the challenges then of editing a Word document when you've got images and text jumping around the page. So when I very first saw Read and Write and the vocab tool, and knowing that I could create a 20-word list really quickly, probably was one of the features that sold it for me. I've got some teachers who love to use that in their classrooms. And so Kim is a Year 4 teacher, and she decided that her Year 4s used Read and Write regularly throughout their day, but they started to think about how in the school they would help the younger students get to know the toolbar. And her class was buddied with Year 2s. So every week the Year 2s would come up and sit with their Year 4 buddy around their students' laptops, and they would use this Year 2 spelling list and create their own little vocab list out of that. And they'd spend time, because it opens it up into a Word document, they were able to then choose which of the definitions they liked the best that helped them understand the meaning of the word. If there was more than one picture that popped up, so in the example you had before with land and the two different versions, they could choose the one that made most sense to them or that suited the context of the learning that the words were coming from. And then what they loved was in the notes column, the teacher would ask them to write a sentence showing them using that word in their own writing, which was fantastic. One of the support teachers in a school shared with me that she felt that Read and Write, while benefit for all of the students in the school, because the licence carried on to the home environment, it helped parents in their school community as well. And often, we know students who have literacy difficulties or diagnosis of dyslexia sometimes have a family link. She shared a beautiful story with me about a refugee student who made great use of the picture dictionary and the vocab list to help his dad understand the English words. So I thought that was a beautiful way of using the support in that family community. And they shared with me a student who was probably struggling in all areas of literacy, struggling academically in most of the curriculum areas. They demonstrated and used to use Read and Write with that student specifically in some individual sessions. And that student actually then decided that they had the skills to stand up, to use their teacher's laptop and actually teach his whole class how they could use Read and Write and create a vocab list and do some of the other features with the highlighting pens and to make notes. So to see that student go from someone who is reluctant to engage in school, to being not very confident about their learning, to being the student who could teach others, and engage in that was probably one of her highlights in using Read and Write in her school. I got to experience teaching a student in a school how to use the Read and Write toolbar. She was a young lady who had been diagnosed with having dyslexia. She found reading for herself to be extremely challenging, and she loved that she could use the reading tools to access content on the web. When I watched her and the way that she operated the tools, she would often listen to the passage being read 2 or 3 times before she felt confident to put that in her own words. Then when it came to writing, she used to use the prediction tool to help her with her spelling. And once we'd had a whole session, so I think my session was about an hour and a half with her, and we packed up, she just made this great statement saying, "Oh my God, I can do my own work in my own words." And that got me thinking, and I sort of asked her and questioned deeper in terms of, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, in the past, I would just copy and paste from the internet to answer questions, but then she said, and then I have to wait for my teacher to come and check it because I'm not sure if I got the right information. So the fact that she now had an ability to put her own work out there, to be able to spell and get things correct, to be able to be confident that she'd got the answers correct, and to be able to do that without having the need of adult support was probably really powerful, and one of the reasons why I love this software. In trying to upskill and grow the use of Read and Write in our schools in Brisbane Catholic Education, I had an opportunity to take some teachers from a school that was considering using it to visit a school that was already using it. And those teachers visited the classroom and saw all learners using it, but we decided that we'd withdraw a small group, and each teacher got their own student expert, and those student experts were able to demonstrate different features of the toolbars and answer those teachers' questions. And it was lovely to see that particularly this group of students that were doing that role were actually a group of targeted students who had low-level literacy skills. And to see them be experts and be able to demonstrate and answer all the teachers' questions, and it was great for their own self-concept to see themselves as successful and that they knew how to do something that even adults didn't know how to do. And sometimes learning from students for technology, they grasp some of those concepts much quicker than we do as adults. That brings me to the last one of my slides, Greg, but I just wanted to say, one little finish summary is that what I love about Read and Write is the opportunities and the tools are applicable for all the learners in a classroom rather than just targeted students, and it allows them to be independent. And just as you demonstrated and did a bit of a refresh of that toolbar, some things came to mind about, you know, being able to personalise which voice you listen to is important for kids, being able to change the rate of the speech so that it suits their learning. Often we pick a slower rate to start with, but the more familiar they become, the faster they can increase the speed for that. Most of the kids, particularly the adolescents, love being able to personalise the colours of the toolbar and getting it to hide away so that it doesn't always sit across the top of their desktop. And we've just explored recently with a school that audio maker, and a way that a teacher who's using OneNote to deliver content to their classroom could quickly create an audio file to sit beside that for all students to be able to access, and basically giving everybody multiple ways of engaging with that print, either reading it for themselves or having it play as they were reading along, potentially being able to then highlight and follow those things along.
Fantastic, Peter. That was awesome. We'll catch up after Fiona's presented to us, and we can talk about some of the ideas you might have for making a great start to the year with Read and Write. But what you've just described is a whole bunch there. I'd like to dive in deeper. But what I'm going to do is hand over to Fiona, and let's kind of We'll swap over. We're going to go now hear from Fiona, who's going to give us a bit of a different perspective in that it's a different state in Australia, New South Wales, and also across a whole state in public schools in New South Wales. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. Yeah, so just a little bit more about my background. So I was Assistive Technology Advisor from 2012 to 2017. If you are working in New South Wales Public Schools, Jo Allen's now the Assistive Technology Advisor and doing an amazing job. My role was really varied, and I had to support lots of levels of the department, so from individual schools and students to system-wide support, such as things like installing IT and making sure, you know, like at a system-wide level, that it had all the things that it needed in terms of accessibility and things like that. So it was a really wide and varied role. And so what I thought I would do is just touch on a couple of the things that were challenges and strengths, I guess, during that time, and then also talk about now in my new role as text help, and it sort of all meshes together. So yeah. So one of the things that for us in New South Wales, and I'm sure it's the same for many schools across Australia, is that we have such student diversity, and so we have students, a large number of students with English as their second language. We have students who are refugees, and I guess one of the things for me that really became clear in the role that I was working in is that our students aren't in these silos of, you know, and often you have students who may have a recognised disability but also come from a language background other than English, and that can really create complexity in terms of supporting them and making sure that they have the tools that they need. Also, we had in our system, we have 750,000 students, or just over, and more than 2,200 schools. And a lot of those were rural and remote schools that the internet was, and its consistency is often, you know, a real issue. So the one part of it was the diversity of our students, which I think we all face. A second part of it was knowing that we had a lot of things in our system that didn't always work the way that we wanted to. So when you were looking at selecting tools, it often became a little bit tricky. And then when we get to the tools side of things, we've actually got a whole bunch of tools in the department. So we're essentially a Microsoft environment, and we're running Internet Explorer. We also have, though, access to the G Suite range of tools and Google Chrome. And we had a lot of our primary schools who were, for want of a better way of saying, iPad schools. So we had a really, you know, we have a diverse range of students, diverse range of tools that people could be working with. So you can imagine that when I sort of was involved, particularly at an individual or a school level, there was a lot of things that we had to consider to make sure that we could, you know, help the schools find the right tools for school or individual students, whatever it may be. So it was fairly, it was a fairly interesting experience, and I think that in the time that I worked as in this role, it went. Read and Write went from being something that was could only be accessed by one student to the newer model, the subscription model, and that was something that for me actually changed a whole lot of things. And I guess one of the things that it really helped me to do was to share with people the way that they could personalise their resources. So we were talking about personalising, and Peter did a great job of talking about personalising, you know, for individual students and groups of students. But another thing that it also allows you to do is personalise resources. And one of the things that was great for me was that you had the one toolbar where you could suggest to people, well, on that toolbar, you're going to be able to have accessible PDFs. You're going to have an MP3 audio maker that will change it to an MP3 format. You're going to have text to speech, and you're going to be able to scan documents. And one of the biggest issues that we face was supporting schools on how to create these alternate formats. And sometimes it could be, you know, a massive, massive issue. And some teachers were great at it, and some schools had really good systems, and others just really, really struggled. And then here was this toolbar that had this whole range of options for people and would enable them to do it relatively quickly once they'd learned how to do that. And of course, the last point there is the Snap Photo app, which we're not talking about today, but is another one of our tools that supported all of that. So that was one side of personalising that was great for me, and we spent a lot of time supporting schools so that they would be able to learn how to create these alternate formats for the range of students that they had at their school. And I guess the other way that we supported was in terms of reaching every learner, and this is probably something that I probably didn't have as much experience in the role, but I've certainly gained that experience over the last couple of years, because one of the things that I did do after I finished my role as assistive technology advisor was go back into classrooms. And I've been working in a Western Sydney primary school for the last 2 years before I started here with Text Help. And I guess the thing that it highlighted for me was the ability that this toolbar, so you've got a toolbar sitting there for any student to be able to use. They've got the range of options. So some students may use just a couple of those options. Other students may use a lot. I did quite a bit of work with a student with vision impairment, and one of the things that would happen with them often was that in the morning they were great with their low vision, but in the afternoon they'd start to get tired, and there was a whole bunch of other tools that they needed. And so they might not use text to speech in the morning, but then in the afternoon, as they've been through that whole busy day, they've started to access the text to speech because that was something that they needed as they got towards the end of the day. And I think that that's one of the things, as Greg mentioned, that I really like, is that it sits up the top there and you can access all the bits that you want to. And, you know, some days you might access all of them. And I think some of my favourite moments in the classroom have been actually giving the text-to-speech tool to kids and students to actually test out. And they're some of the funniest times that you will have, because they will show you things that you've never thought would be possible and make it quite entertaining. So that's one of the things. And one of the students that I worked with, who was in year 5, when we introduced her to the toolbar, it's just sort of got this, as we're going through the features, and probably that's something that I was going to mention at the end, but I'll mention now, is really important to make sure that, as Peter mentioned, that there's lots of training for the students around the different features and how to use them. And as we were going through the toolbar and showing her the different features, and she needed the full range of features to support her to be successful in the classroom, she just kept giving me this little side glance and going, "Oh, that's really handy, isn't it?" And she must have said it about 4 times, but you know, you could see she was wanting to be very cool about, you know, this was a tool that was going to help her at school, but it was something that had lots of things that she was going to be able to use, and she was very excited about it. And I guess just highlighting what Greg's already mentioned and what I said, a great feature in the Windows toolbar is the scan tool, and that really saves lots of people lots of time in terms of being able to access the resources there and then. And if something's not in the right format, you've still got an opportunity to do it if you've got the resources and the Windows toolbar in there and then in the classroom, not sending someone off to get something digitally done in some way. So that's probably my, I guess, sharing for my bits and pieces. I kind of jumped all over the place there, but yeah,
that's actually great, Fiona, because that's a kind of a great segue into, because I wanted, I'm just going to take this back the screen, and I just wanted to let's get me back into here to say that, let me just get this back up here. Here we go. That's what I want. About what's new, and a couple of things about what's new. You talked there about how you can, students can personalize this toolbar for them and how they can have it for them. And what's one of the things in the toolbar, the new feature in this toolbar is what we're calling the exam toolbar. But if I just quickly show you what you can do now with the Read and Write for Windows toolbar, if I go into settings and go into show more settings, and then up here where it's got find setting, I can type in admin settings, and then I've got a password set up already. And I can go in here and I can decide which of these features a particular student can have access to or not have access to. And the student can actually turn these off themselves as well, but I can do it and lock it down for some students. So for younger students, I might want certain features not available. Or just as important, I actually might have this in an exam situation where I only want to have, say, the text-to-speech available. I don't want all the other features available. So I can actually turn those off and set them up. I can even do things like decide which features I want, and I can turn them off. I can actually turn them off and on here, and then I can actually put in there even a start date and an end date. So I can actually have them turn off for a period of time or not a period of time, as an example. So that's one of the cool features that are new features that's in Read and Write. And the other one, while I'm talking about new features, if I just get out of that, don't save all that, and go here, we've updated what we used to call our spell checker now to be what we call Check It. And so Check It is this new feature on the toolbar. If you're new to Read and Write, this will be totally new to you. And if you've got an older version, you won't see this. You need the most recent version. So you need to make sure that you're getting yourself or the IT people to make sure you're getting the updates coming through. But with the latest version of the toolbar, when I choose the Check It feature, it will look at whatever document I have open, and you can see what it's done. It underlines where it finds any spelling errors, grammar errors, or even any errors around confusable words. So here it's actually put an underline under day and so, and if I click on that, it's telling me that there should maybe be
Day, so.
It will read it back to you, but it looks like I probably do need to have a comma there. So it's giving me some grammar support. And when I go over to here and I've got the word there, I can see maybe is that the right one I'm using. I'm get confused about which there to use. It will give me the alternative that I may wish to explore. I can also do things like if I want to dive deeper as a student, down the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, I've got a Check It window. I can open it up. And what it will do now, it will now go in and give me much more detail about what I'm actually encountering when I'm proofreading my work. So here it will find the first error. It will tell me what kind of error it is. Here it's saying it's a grammar error, and it will show it to me in context, and it will let me either change it or not change it, and I can flick through and you can see I'll go through and it's giving me all those different errors that I'm finding, be it grammar errors or it could be spelling errors, and it'll give me various spelling suggestions. So it's quite a powerful what it will do. And the other thing it will do, if I do encounter any words that actually are spelt correctly, but they're actually being identified as incorrect, I can, so for instance, the word Wallingbar, which is a little town just near where I live, I can now add that to my dictionary, and then that's going to be in my dictionary. So I can actually be populating my own dictionary. So that's a couple of the new features that I've built into Read and Write for Windows. Hey, I'll just go back onto the screen here and bring it up. Fiona and Peter. So awesome, the things that you guys have been doing and have done, and what's happening in all the schools that are using a program like Read and Write for Windows. You know that globally we have over 18 million Read and Write users now globally. So there's a lot of students out there pressing that little puzzle piece. If you it's a new school year, 2019. I'm a school. I've got Read and Write for Windows across my school. Do you have any ideas, keys to having a great start to the school year using Read and Write? What about you, Peter? Any hints what you would do?
First of all, is just think about how the tools can be used for all students. So a lot of the times people think the reading feature is only needed for students who can't read, but it's an excellent tool for proofreading your own work. And I just highlighted that yesterday to a whole group of high school students about often we read over our work and we don't see our mistakes. So actually listening back to it can be a great proofreader. But if you're new to Read and Write and it's something that you haven't played with before, my tip to you is just consider using one or two tools and work on those first. Don't feel overwhelmed that you need to be able to use and learn everything at once. And probably the last tip would be, don't forget that there are excellent videos from Text Help on YouTube, which remind you how to use the tools, and quick and easy even to show to your class so that they're all over it. And what I found in even using one of them yesterday is some of the ways that you can customize or personalize, and it shows you how to play around with your settings. So
Yeah,
that would be my tip.
okay, great, and that's a good tip about. So if you just go to YouTube and find the Text Help channel, we've got really short, like the 2 or 3 minute long only videos that tell you about each of the features. So every feature you'll find a little video of a how-to, and the great thing about that is that they're all updated and they're all current, and you get all that information. So that's good. Hey Fiona, what about you? You got any tips for having a great start to the school year with Read and Write for Windows?
Well, I think putting that systems hat back on again and saying, well, make sure that your staff are on board. If you're about to implement it with your school, that they have an understanding, maybe brainstorm some of the things that you're hoping to achieve by using the tool. I agree with Peter. It's really good to, start with, it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so many tools. Choose where they're going to start and how they're going to use it. And then, do some nice explicit teaching. Once your staff are comfortable, make sure that they know they're going to do some explicit teaching with the students on the range of ways that they can use the tools that they're going to use in the classroom. The students will go way past us really quickly, but it's just nice to start off and give them the heads up and say, this is what I'm thinking, and then they'll be telling you loads of things to do within the week or two. So yeah, they're probably the main things. And maybe just, if you are looking at a target group of students, to think about, should I take some, pre and post assessment in terms of the value that the tools had, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That data is really important, isn't it? To kind of measure success, and to be able to celebrate that when you get it. Hey, and Peter, I love that bit at the end of your little section there, where and it kind of registered with me again about a great tip for people is actually use your students as trainers, where you actually had teachers being shown how to use the program by student experts, and that's a great idea as well. Having a student genius bar in your school where they actually can be the instructors and the troubleshooters for using a program like Read and Write for Windows as well. So thanks, guys. That's perfect. Now, okay, we're getting towards the end of this being our last webinar in this webinar series of our back to school webinars for 2019. And just to say, you're thinking, well, how can I get started? You might not actually have Read and Write. You might want to start doing it. Well, one of the great things about this is that it's free for all teachers. So any teacher can get access to Read and Write. And if you want to, you can just go. You'll actually be getting a copy of these slides. There'll be a follow-up email from us and we'll be giving you a link to how you can access a recording of this webinar and all the other webinars we've also had over the last week of all the different back-to-school webinars we've just had, and a whole bunch of resources. So you'll be able to see the slide that's actually there, which is giving you that quick shortcut. But if you were just to type into your search engine, into your address bar, free for teachers, one of the into Google free for teachers, one of the results will come up. You'll get a link to our web page where we've got free for teachers, and there you can sign up and get your own copy your own subscription to Read and Write, not only for Windows, but the whole suite of Read and Write tools across all platforms. And by the way, when you're there, you'll also get access to the Equatio program as well. So that's our mathematics program. Now, and as you're kind of going on this journey and you're kind of delving into using a program like Read and Write for Windows, you need to get support, and one of the best places to get it is from your fellow educators. And we've set up a Asia Pac Facebook group. If you're a Facebook user, you just need to go to Asia Pac. Do a search for Asia Pac on Facebook and you'll find our group and you can join, and then you'll get access to a whole bunch of stuff that we're sharing, not only the people on our team, but we're encouraging the members of our Facebook group to share and to discuss. And so that's a great way to get access to that. And heads up, keep an eye out, because we're going to be having the same, we'll be putting up an Instagram account soon, won't we, Fiona? That's our vision to do that. That will be good. And if you need any support at all around using Read and Write, support in terms of you want more information, you want to find out how your school can get it, or you've got it and you actually need some technical support, whatever it is, you can contact the local support here and advice here at the at TextHelp's Asia Pacific office in Brisbane.